Week 11 of the fantasy football season. His wide receivers start sit every matchup this week. New York Jets at the New England Patriots Thursday Night Football. The Jets, they're going to be down Garrett Wilson. He's going to be out 3 to 4 weeks with his injury. And they're pretty much down to no names and reclamation wide receivers. John Mechie, Adonai Mitchell, Arian Smith. Someone's going to have to catch the football for this New York Jet team. We know they got Mechie in the Michael Carter deal a few weeks ago and Mitchell in the Sauce Gardner deal. But none of these guys are really up to snuff with the playbook. And we know this New York Jet offense hasn't really moved the football all season long, besides Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson being playmakers in this offense. So all these receivers are sit. Stephon Diggs a start. He's been a touchdown machine over the last month of the season. Is Stephon Diggs. Him and Drake May, especially in the goal line, they have good rapport. They're making plays. And Stephon Diggs, once again this week, bad secondary of the Jets is a start. Kayshon Boutte, he's a sit. He's a fringe option if he plays in this game. He missed last week's game with a hamstring injury. And Boutte as well was fine in the end zone. But when you got a quarterback like Drake May who spreads that football out, and already in his second season, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, he makes everything easier for players around him. But this week, if he's back from the injury, he's a fringe option. Demario Douglas, Matt Collins, there sits for me in this ball game. Douglas last week, I thought he was going to step up. He didn't do much in that game. And Matt Collins, yes, he went over 100 yards in that one, which was a good ball game for him at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But Matt Collins this week, I don't think he's going to do it once again. And we've seen this throughout his career where he's bouncing team to team every season is Matt Collins. And he'll have a couple pop games here and there per season, but never a fantasy option. Washington Commanders, Dolphins, international game, Deebo Samuel, he's pretty much the only healthy wide receiver with name notability for this Commander team. It looks like once again Terry McLaurin's going to be out, and with this Commander team 3-7 and going nowhere this season, it just makes sense for him to sit out. So Deebo found the end zone last week. He's the number one option all season long pretty much when McLaurin's barely played, and this week in a good matchup versus a bad Dolphins secondary, he's a start. Jalen Waddle a start ever since Tyreek Hill went down early in the season and out for the year. Waddle stepped up, and he's been a true playmaker and making big plays where they even refused to trade Waddle away to division rival, the Buffalo Bills, for a first-round pick. So this week in a great matchup versus a bad secondary of the Commanders with Lattimore out for the season. He's an easy start. Malik Washington, I know he found the end zone last week, but he's had many opportunities so far this season, and we really haven't seen much out of him, so he's a sit. Los Angeles Chargers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ladd McConkey had the best game yards-wise for him this season last week versus Steelers. 4 catches, 107 yards, found the end zone, and he almost had a second touchdown, but it was good hustle by Jalen Ramsey to chase him down and tackle him in the red zone. But Ladd McConkey, number one option in this offense. He's making plays. Him and Herbert are locked in, and this week versus a bad defense of the Jaguars, he's an easy start. Quentin Johnston, a start for me as well. I know the numbers the last month of the season have gone down, but if Rondé Gatson can't give it a go in this game, I think some of the targets are going to go to Quentin Johnston. And Johnson, he's still going out there making plays, but obviously not at the high volume he was early in the season. Keenan Allen has hit the last 3-4 weeks of the season. Keenan Allen's been phased out of this offense for this Charger team. They're running the football well with Kamini Vidal. Obviously, Ladd McConkey having a great season, and Rondé Gatson, like I said, the last month of the season has taken a lot of targets from Keenan Allen. And if Gatson doesn't give it a go with the ankle injury this week, still Keenan Allen, to me, I can't trust him in a crucial situation in Week 11. He's a sit. Now to the Jaguars, Brian Thomas Jr. We'll see if he plays in this game. He missed last week's game at the Texans with an ankle injury, and it's been a lost season in his sophomore year for Brian Thomas. So if he does play in this game, I'll give him a start. Jacksonville, they do move the football down the field, but this could be a game where they're trailing and chasing points. Parker Washington a start. Last week, it was an all-around ball game for Parker Washington. Nice toe-tap touchdown in the back of the end zone, and then a punt return touchdown as well. So he's a gadget guy. He could do it all. Him and Lawrence, they've been locked in all season long, and arguably he's been the best receiver in this receiving room is Washington for Jacksonville. He's a start. And Jacoby Myers made his debut last week for this Jacksonville Jaguar team after getting traded from the Raiders to the Jaguars. But obviously, I don't think he has much value is Jacoby Myers, and he still has to pick up the playbook and get things going. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Buffalo Bills. Emeka Egbuka, one of the best receivers in his rookie season in all fantasy football. This week, pretty good matchup versus a banged-up secondary of the Bills. He's an easy start. Tez Johnson a start as well. Chris Godwin, it's not looking good that he's going to come back anytime soon. And we know Mike Evans is out for the year, most likely for the regular season with the collarbone injury. So with those factors and Tez Johnson going out there making plays and had 4 catches, 42 yards, and 2 touchdowns in last week's loss versus the Patriots, he's an easy start. Khalil Shakir, a start in this one. Shakir, the number one option, especially now with Kincaid most likely out, that he's week to week with the hamstring injury. So Shakir, he can run the routes, he can make the plays. And the one thing, obviously, Buffalo was missing at the deadline, trying to get that number one wide receiver where they tried for Waddle, but a deal couldn't happen. So Shakir, a start. Keon Coleman, a fringe option. I know he scored a touchdown in last week's game, but that was garbage time. And we have to see way more out of Keon Coleman for me to have confidence to put him in the starting lineup weekly. So last week definitely was a start for Coleman, but like I said, have to see a little bit more. And now with only 2 teams on bye, we're going to see more players that you've been using over the last few weeks. Maybe ride the pine. Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. Rome Odunze a start. Last week he bounced back after he had a goose egg. In Week 9's ball game was Rome Odunze. So Odunze, the number one option in this offense for the Chicago Bear team. And it was hard to believe he had no points in a 47-point game they put up, like I said, at the Bengals in Week 9. But Odunze bounced back last week and this week in a good matchup versus a Vikings secondary that isn't all that great this season. He's a start. DJ Moore, fringe option. He had the goose egg in last week's game. Moore had two good games in a row in Week 8 at Baltimore and then Week 9 at Cincinnati. But last week he didn't do anything. And DeAndre Swift had a good game. Loveland had a decent game. And obviously Odunze had the big game for the Bear team. So this week, to me, DJ Moore, fringe option. Now to the Vikings, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. There starts for me in this game. I know Justin Jefferson, he hasn't put up elite numbers this season. He's still been a consistent wideout, but we haven't seen that 25, 30-point fantasy game out of him. So this week in the matchup versus familiar division foe of the Chicago Bears, I think Jefferson maybe could have one of his better games of the season. He's a start, and Jordan Addison a start as well. It's been hot and cold type of season for Addison. One good game, one bad game type of deal. It's been, and obviously they've taken a big hit at the quarterback position, going from Sam Darnold, the type of season he put up last season, to this year with J.J. McCarthy and Carson Wentz. A big downgrade, obviously, for this offense. But this week, I think both these receivers versus a bad defense that gives up a lot of fantasy points to starts. Jalen Naylor, he had a nice game last week, over 100 yards, found the end zone. But we've seen nothing all season long from Naylor, and it was just one pop game. So he's a sit this week. Green Bay Packers, New York Giants, Romeo Doubs, if he plays, he's a start in this game. He left the game in the fourth quarter versus the Philadelphia Eagles in the Week 10 loss, 10-7, and a tough one on Monday night. So Doubs, he only had 1 catch, 5 yards. Nothing was going good at all for this Green Bay Packer offense, and nothing was going for this Philadelphia Eagle offense as well, where it was a good defensive matchup that you rarely see a game ending 10-7. So if Dobbs gives it a go, short week, I know, but it's a good matchup with the New York Giants, a defense that can't stop anyone. I would give him a start even after a bad game. And Christian Watson, we know he's a big-time play receiver. He had only 2 catches, 45 yards in Week 10 versus the Eagles, but he got the targets. And like I said, especially if Dobbs is out as well, we're going to see more Christian Watson, I think. Matthew Golden, even if he returns, we haven't seen anything from the first-round pick this season. He's a sit-in. Dontayvion Wicks, he had a couple decent plays in that ball game versus Philadelphia, but he hasn't been a fantasy option. He's a sit now to the Giants. Wendell Robinson, Darius Slayton are fringe options. We'll see if Jackson Dart plays in this ball game for this New York Giant team. And he struggled, and this offense is going to struggle, I think, with Russell Wilson in their quarterback. At least with Dart, he showed promise. He can make things happen, move the football down the field. And I know Brian Daboll's out. We'll see what type of offense they run now is this New York Giant team, but I believe most of it's going to be the same, and we'll see if Dart plays. But like I said, the ceiling for Wendell Robinson and Darius Slayton just isn't high, in my opinion, this week, so they're fringe options. Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans. Nico Collins to start. Last week, a big game it was for Nico Collins, going over 130 yards in that one, had a 2-point conversion. He's the number one option in this offense, obviously, for this Houston Texan team, and this week in a good matchup at a bad Titan defense, he's an easy start. Jaden Higgins, Christian Kirk is Higgins did find the end zone last week, and his playing time's getting better, and his numbers are being more consistent, but have to see a little bit more out of Jaden Higgins. And also, like I said, if CJ Stroud's back in the lineup, who knows? To me, Davis Mills, a lot of these guys had their best games of the season under Mills on the center, even though I know they were down 3 touchdowns the majority of the game. He still went out there, and these guys put up numbers, but Higgins and Kirk Now to the Titans, Calvin Ridley, if he plays, he's been banged up over the last few weeks with a hamstring injury, but now coming off by Elike Omener and Shimi DK. These guys are will sits. You can't trust any of these guys in this offense, unfortunately, for this Tennessee Titan team. I thought this season these players would be pretty decent with Cam Ward in their quarterback, but it's been a tough season overall for this Tennessee Titan team. So with all those factors, these receivers, I can't trust their sits. Carolina Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons to Torrey McMillan to start. It's been an up-and-down rookie season for him. And besides Rico Dotto, this offense hasn't been really elite all season long for Carolina. So McMillan last week had a little bit of a bounce-back game. 5 catches, 60 yards in that ball game and a tough loss versus the Saints. And this week at the Falcons, where it's a fast track in there in Atlanta, I think he could go out there once again and be a decent starting option. Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, these guys they had high hopes for was this Carolina Panther team. But so far, once again, this season we haven't seen much. I know Legette, he's been banged up a little bit, and Coker has missed majority of the season. But Bryce Young's not really getting these guys the football, and they're not on the fantasy radar right now. It's Drake London a must start each and every week. One of the better wide receivers in all fantasy football is Drake London, and him and Michael Penix, they're locked in. And he's just been finding the end zone with 4 touchdowns in the last 2 games. So he's an easy start. Darnell Mooney a sit. Pretty much the 4th option in this offense. Last year he had a good year with Kirk Cousins in there at quarterback. But him and Penix just never really linked up. And they're not making plays. He's a sit. Cincinnati Bengals at the Steelers. We saw this was a high-scoring game going back weeks ago on a Thursday night, where both these teams put up big numbers. And Jamar Chase put up an insane game with 16 catches in that one. So obviously Chase, he's locked in each and every week is a must start. Him and Flacco are making big plays, and they haven't missed a beat. But with Joe Burrow returning in Week 13, this offense could even take it to the next level. But this week at Pittsburgh, Chase and Higgins, who both had good games at Pittsburgh a few weeks ago, they're must starts. And DK Metcalf, I know he struggled over the last couple weeks here for the Steelers team. Last week, once again, another pedestrian game. 3 out of 4 games, he's failed to reach double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues. But this week, versus one of the worst defenses in the league in Cincinnati, he's a start. San Francisco 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals. Juwan Jennings, he's a start for me in this game. Jennings, the last couple weeks, he's playing good football. Him and Mac Jones, they've definitely got a rapport down, even though there's a good possibility Brock Purdy could return to the lineup in this week's game. But Juwan Jennings, him and George Kittle, the only 2 options, and obviously McCaffrey mixed in the receiving room, who can make an impact. So he's a star. Kendrick Bourne, he had a few big games a few weeks ago, but ever since then, he's barely done anything. So this week, even in a good matchup at Arizona, he's a sit. Marvin Harrison a start. 2 weeks in a row now for Marvin. He's found the end zone. Jacoby Brissett's definitely upgraded Harrison and Trey McBride stats over the last few weeks. And this week in a matchup where they're most likely going to be chasing points. And we know this is a banged up and beat up 49er defense, with obviously Nick Bosa out for the season and Fred Warner. Marvin Harrison, an easy start. Seattle Seahawks at the Rams. Jackson Smith-Njigba, one of the best receivers already in his 3rd season in the NFL. Last week, he didn't do much after that touchdown, but they were en route 28-0, and it was a blowout victory. So this week, in a tough matchup at the Rams, where this is a great division matchup in the NFC West, Jackson Smith-Njigba a start. Cooper Kupp, Rashid Shaheed, that sits for me in this game. Cooper Kupp last week, besides that one big catch for 60-plus yards, he didn't do anything in that one. And pretty much, I think his best years are behind him, unfortunately, for Kupp's season. No, Kupp's versus his former team. I just don't see him going out there and really doing much as Cooper Kupp. So this week, he's a sit for me, where him and Sam Darnold really haven't been locked in. And Rashid Shaheed, he's got to pick up the playbook. I know you could just tell him go run deep and make a big play, and they're going to need points in this one, obviously, if you want to keep up with this high-powered Rams offense. But Shaheed, after what I saw last week, I think more than 1 week he's going to need to get this playbook down. He's a sit. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, this starts. Puka Nacua weekly, he's finding the end zone, 6-7 catches it seems like. And he's a matchup problem. It doesn't matter what team he's versing. A start, and Devontae Adams a start as well, where he's been a touchdown machine all season long in his 1st season with Los Angeles. I know he left the game with his back in last week's ball game at the San Francisco 49ers. But if Adams doesn't play, obviously you're going to have to find a replacement for him. But if he does, he's a must-start. Kansas City Chiefs at the Denver Broncos, big division game between these 2 teams. And Rashee Rice, he's been locked in ever since he returned from suspension. So this offense is taking it to the next level with Rice in there. I know they had a tough ball game before the bye at the Buffalo Bills, but Rice is still going to go out there and put up his numbers. Xavier Worthy, a fringe option. he's definitely been a bust. Where he was going 4th, 5th round in most fantasy drafts was Xavier Worthy. But let's see if they could get him back to being that deep ball threat like he was in the playoffs, helping them get to the Super Bowl last season. And this Bronco defense we know is one of the better units in the league. But this week coming off bye, I think Kansas City definitely game planned heavy in this one. And these guys are going to get involved. Cortland Sutton to start. The last couple weeks, numbers have definitely been dropping down for Cortland Sutton, where Troy Franklin's outplayed him. But I think Sutton, he's due for a big game. And like I said, even struggling, he still had double-digit fantasy games. 3 out of 4 ball games is Cortland Sutton. Troy Franklin, a fringe option. I know the numbers have been good, but we have to see a little bit more out of Franklin, where he's depending on the touchdown more than anything. Because if he's not getting the touchdown, targets really haven't been great. And even the yards haven't been over the top for Franklin, but he's definitely on the fringe option board this week. Baltimore Ravens at the Cleveland Browns. Zay Flowers is start each and every week. The only thing with Flowers, I'm waiting for that one big game where he has like 120 yards and a touchdown on 6 to 8 catches. So Flowers, he's been double digits every week since Lamar Jackson been back in the lineup this week. Pretty decent matchup with the Browns. I know Denzel Ward, one of the better corners in the league. But the thing is here, Zay Flowers, like I said, it just takes one big play from him to have a day. Rashad Bateman is sit. He's banged up with an ankle injury. And at this point, he's that 4th or 5th option in this offense anyway, with Lamar, Derrick Henry leading the run for this Baltimore Raven team. And then you got, obviously, Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews in the pecking order. So even if he plays this week, he's a sit. Jerry Jeudy, Isaiah Bond, Cedric Tillman all sits. Jerry Jeudy finally had a good game last week, his best game of the season. But that was at a depleted New York Jet team that's rebuilding and traded away Sauce Gardner. So I have to see more out of Jerry Jeudy just to put him in the lineup, because he was bad for 9 out of 10 weeks this season. He's a sit. Isaiah Bond, we haven't seen much from him at all this season. He's a sit. And Cedric Tillman, he's back in the lineup, but he's another wide receiver where he's been touchdown dependent and garbage time. You have to count on him over the last couple seasons. He's a sit. Detroit Lions at the Philadelphia Eagles. What a showdown this is going to be on Sunday Night Football between two high-powered offenses. Even though we saw last week Philadelphia not score a lot, but their defense did a lot of work in that game. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, both starts for me. St. Brown, obviously one of the best receivers in the league. Great hands, great route running ability. And him and Jared Goff, they've been locked in for many seasons. So this week, even in a tough matchup with Quinshawn Mitchell, most likely covering a majority of this game, he's a start. And Jameson Williams, the last few weeks, especially now with Dan Campbell taking over the play calling, he got involved big time in that ball game at the Commanders, especially one of those drives to start off the second half. It was all Jameson Williams. So with two big games in a row for Williams and a matchup in Philadelphia where we know Williams, he's got that big playability, he's a start. A.J. Brown coming off another dud game, 2 catches, 13 yards in the win at Green Bay in Week 10. But A.J. Brown, he's that receiver that he could go off at any time. And I know he was taken second, third round. It doesn't mean you could keep him in your starting lineup. But I believe this week, in a potential high-scoring game where the secondary is depleted of Detroit, he's a start. And Devonta Smith, the biggest play of the game in Week 10, a long touchdown where he ended the game with 4 catches, 69 yards, and found the end zone. So Devonta Smith, he's been outperforming A.J. Brown this season for the most part. And I think this week, once again, both these receivers, though, are starting this week. Dallas Cowboys at the Vegas Raiders Monday night to close it out. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, one of the best 1-2 wide receiver combos in all pro football. And this Vegas Raider defense, they can't stop anyone. Dak Prescott has been locked in all season long with both these players. We've seen some big games from Lamb, and then when Lamb was out, George Pickens really took over and put up some big numbers as the number 1 wide receiver. So this week, coming off a bye, refreshed a little bit is this Dallas Cowboy team. They're both starts. Trey Tucker start. This Cowboy defense can't stop anyone. I know they went out there at the trade deadline. They fixed this defense in a big way, trading for Quinnen Williams, trading for Zonovan Wilson, a decent Mike linebacker. But the thing, they still need to address the corner or safety spot where they've been getting burned all season long as this Dallas Cowboy team. So Trey Tucker, now with Myers out of town, getting traded to Jacksonville. He's the number 1 wide receiver on this Vegas Raider team, even though obviously Brock Bowers is the number 1 option in the passing game. But Tucker this week, I think, have a good game. He's a start. And Dante Thornton, they've been using him as a deep ball threat, but nothing more than that for the rookie is this Vegas Raider team. So this week, I know it's a great matchup versus a Cowboy defense that can't stop anyone, but he's a sit this week. So that's wide receiver start, sit every matchup for Week 11 of the fantasy football season.